Hello everyone, Francesco Cipollone here of Frank for Friend. If you're part of the crew, you know I do cyber walk and cyber talk, so today I'm a little bit still because I want to talk to you and show you one of the new monster features that we released. Over the past year, we've been working with a set of selected clients that have enabled container vulnerability scanning in their CSPM or natively with us or natively with the cloud security solution. And guess what? They got hit with millions of vulnerability. The question that we start asking them, are those active? Are those vulnerability reachable? Do they need to be fixed in the container where that vulnerability originated? Do you really need to matter? Do you really need to care about that particular vulnerability? The answer was no. A lot of those vulnerabilities were actually noise. They were vulnerability, they were non-existing, they caused noise, and they cluttered the backlog. So we worked with those clients to create three sets of features. Container throttling, looking at which container was active and where. Container lineage, looking at which container was actually being run from which image, from which version in which registry. That is an evolution of the throttling that enables us to look at fundamentally which image was actually being loaded in which registry and were actually being run in which node. That enables us to say, these are the container vulnerability that you actually care and don't care it in the image or in the registry version, but care in the original image that you loaded. And that can be in a landing registry or that can be in multiple registries, but enable security professional to pinpoint, actually we don't have 500 of this vulnerability, we have just image, so if we publish a new image, then all of that get resolved. So it helps developer and engineers focusing on the vulnerability that matters more, in the images that matters more. Now, we worked as well on identifying from code to cloud which vulnerability were actually reachable from a software perspective. So bringing all of the software side of the world into the mix. And with container lineage is a monster of a feature because we bring these three elements together, looking at which image version is actually active in which registry and is being loaded, and all active and are not running will get disabled. That in itself, for one of our fintech clients, saved them 97% vulnerability, resulting in a 97% reduction of vulnerability from a container perspective. That's not hours, that's years in development time and millions in terms of savings, but also builds trust with developers. And together with that, we can look at which build file and which particular software get built in which container. In this particular case, it's not a microservice, but it's a monster of a service because, as you can see, you have multiple build files built inside this particular image. But these enable us to fundamentally answer the question, which application gets built in which container that is actively running. So that enables us to fundamentally get a prioritized list of recontextualized vulnerability that are actively and actually running. And that enables us with this feature that is called Contextual Deduplication to disable the vulnerability in the container that can be fixed in the container. So if you're looking at a series of vulnerability in a container, you will notice in Phoenix, if you're one of our premium client or enterprise client, that those container vulnerability that can be fixed, in the particular case, this library can be fixed in the container and needs to be fixed in the particular build file or in the build file from this particular repo. And this saves hours to the operational team that try to figure out who owns this image, who do I need to talk to actually reduce the risk of this container. And at the same time, for the SecOps teams and the AppSec team, it brings together these two teams because enable us to reprioritize the vulnerability at build level or a code level when that particular library is being loaded in memory. And by creating this agentlessly, we can activate this feature if for your favorite CSPM, for your favorite container scanning, if you scan these things at pipeline level, or if you plug us in directly and you let us scan your container and cloud vulnerability directly with your favorite provider. So it works regardless if you have an agent or not. So it doesn't require you to modify all of your base image and all of the container image that you're running, reducing the friction to deploy this feature to all of your development community. So this enables us to basically create a profile of which build file runs in which container and actively saying which library get actively loaded. So this gives you reachability analysis not only at function level in your build file, not only on library level and code level, but also which function is actually loaded in memory. And this is the first time all of these features get brought in together. This, for on one of our AdTech clients, enable us to reduce 88,000 vulnerability to just a few hundred vulnerability, 600 vulnerability on the library level that were actually fixable. And as I mentioned before, 97% reduction just on the throttling for our fintech client. This is a game-changing feature that helps security gain trust with development team, building a remediation plan that actually point out the vulnerability that needs to be solved in the code level and the vulnerability that should not be resolved in the container level, building trust from a SecOps perspective and clarity, but as well reducing the burnout that is the mission that we are embarked here in Phoenix. So please have a look at Container Lineage that unify contextual deduplication and throttling all into one monster of features that will enable you to reduce 97% of vulnerability from a container perspective and 70 to 80% of software vulnerability from an SCA perspective. Stay safe out there. Know who does what, where, and why is important. That's a new mission that we are embarking with Phoenix to help development, security, and executive to talk the same language and to focus on remediating the vulnerability that really matter in the context where it really matter. This is Francesco Cipollone, CEO and co-founder of Phoenix Security. Stay safe out there and fix your vulnerability with priority. Goodbye.